hey, wait a second, what game am I playing? We need to focus on the questions we ask ourselves and our team members, not on the answers. Oftentimes we're so good at finding answers, but oftentimes we find the right answers to the wrong questions. There's a lot of power in the questions, and we're always so focused on the answers, and we don't realize how by shaping the question, you are shaping the answer.
Top leaders, meaningful conversation, actionable advice, bulldoze complacency, ignite inspiration, create impact. Produced by the Southwestern family of companies. This is the Action Catalyst.
Are you interested in advertising with the Action Catalyst? Our listeners could be hearing about your brand right here, right now. For details, shoot us an email at info@theactioncatalyst.com.
Today's guest is Topaz Adizes, an Emmy Award-winning writer, director, author, and experienced design architect and the founder of The Skin Deep. His book, 12 Questions for Love, A Guide to Intimate Conversations and Deeper Relationships, is available now.
Okay, just so you know, I am so hyped to talk to you.
Definitely, let's do it. How you doing?
Oh, awesome. How are you?
Good, very happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I'm super excited.
Where are you at? Where are you at? What is that behind you?
Nashville, Tennessee.
I left my heart in Nashville. My high school girlfriend played soccer at Vanderbilt. Summer love, freshman year, went there, broke my heart.
We're sorry.
That's my memory of Nashville, Tennessee, which I hear is an amazing city.
Come back. Bring your family. It's an incredible town.
Super cool.
Okay, so I have so many questions. I have a pretty decent human curiosity / fascination with psychology of humans. And one of my favorite ways to engage is just asking questions. I'm just curious. That's going to be my thing, my epitaph. I'm just curious. And your background, this phrase, illuminating humanity. Where does that come from for you?
Yeah, good question. What is humanity? I ask that a lot. And I also ask if it's humanity I love or is it humans I love? And frankly, I'm not sure I like humans, but I love humanity. But what is humanity? I think humanity is not something that's in us. I think it's what's between us. It's that incredible conversation you have with a stranger in the taxi that we used to have before we had phones, or in the elevator on the plane flight, where you just share about life and you find this resonant connection with someone, or this shared reflection, even though you have two disparate souls that will never meet again. And you have that moment of like, or you have a big fight with your best friend or your partner or your sibling, and you go through it. And then afterwards you can look each other in the eye and you just feel a sense of connection, of understanding, right? Or you're on that sports team or a work team where you have a common goal and you work through the long hours at night or challenges and you accomplish that goal and you successfully do it together and you look at each other, you give a high five, or you have that shared goal. And there's a sense of like coherence with each other. For a moment, you don't feel lonely. You've shared something, you've accomplished something, you've gone through a test, you come out together and you feel connected with someone. That to me is humanity. So the question is, how do you cultivate it? And that's what I've been exploring for the last 11 years. And you're asking, where does it come from? Well, it comes from a deep wound. Look, my parents got divorced when I was 4, and I was the oldest sibling. I have a sibling 15 months younger. And, when you're 4 years old, you look up these parents that you have, and they're not parents, they're gods. I mean, when you're that young, your parents are incredible beings, right? When the gods are going at war, you start going, what's this about? My parents, great parents, I have great relationships with them now. Them getting divorced was a great thing for them. And frankly, as painful as it was for me, it was good for me too. Why? Because it created a hunger for connection and intimacy. And so first it started as a wound that turned into a hunger that became a gift. I went into filmmaking as a young person, in my 20s and 30s, and I found that the camera was a great bridge. It was a door opener. It was entering in people's worlds, and I could record them. I could talk to them. I could ask questions. And so I've used that gift of filmmaking to create this project called The And I think it's a wonderful archive of human relationships. But that ultimately comes from a deep wound as a child of witnessing divorce and seeing a lack of connection.
So then, do you remember the first time you had a consciousness, an awareness of, hey, this is real human connection?
My first kiss, which was late in life. I was 17. It was the end of my junior year of high school. And I remember intentionally, I know this is probably not what anybody's expecting to hear on this podcast, but you asked the question, and I remember as a young person, I said, I know I'm a very passionate person. And if I start engaging like physically with someone kissing, I'm going to be very emotionally passionate and I'm going to want to go far. So I need to wait until I'm mature enough to do that. I don't want to do that when I'm 13 or 14. So anyways, end of junior year. And I remember looking in the eyes of this, young woman who's in my class. We're both juniors. And I just remember my heart exploding looking into her eyes. I saw the whole universe in her eyes and I felt the whole universe in my heart. And that's a moment when I felt like connection. That's what I've been yearning for and looking for. And that was, I guess, the first time I really felt that.
So the physical connection was the kiss.
It's not the kiss. It's looking in the other person in the eye and having this strong emotion for them. It wasn't, just the act of the kiss. The kiss was followed that, but it was looking into some other person's deep black onyx of the eye. We often forget that if you look at any animal and any human, regardless of what it is and what color eye it is, at the center, it's always the same color. It's a black onyx. And isn't that interesting? I mean, I don't care if it's a snake, a shark, or a human. The center is a black onyx. And we look in the depth of the black onyx of another human being, there's a journey there to be had.
So then we fast forward and you go, okay, I want to spend a lot of my time in craft seeking that, sharing it with others.
Well, it's funny when I look back, I can find this undercurrents of what shaped me. What did life sculpt into me? What experiences it gave me such that I was in a position to receive this beautiful format that then we're applying and sharing with the world. On the top line, it's, I was a filmmaker. I had films that went to Sundance and then I had a film at Cannes and things were not taking off. I had films set up and it was it, but my friends were doing really well. And even though I'd done really successfully, 2 at Sundance and 1 at Cannes, which is the biggest film festival in the world, it wasn't picking up. And by accident, I put the film on Vimeo without a password and it got picked up as short of the week. And in 1 week, I had 500,000 views in 1 week. And that was a big, hey, wait a second. What game am I playing? What game am I playing? And I just want to share with the audience, if you're going to take anything away from this conversation, it's that we need to focus on the questions we ask ourselves and our team members, not on the answers. And so that question of, hey, what game am I playing? Because until that point, I was playing the game of being a film director, right? But then I just got 500,000 people, 400,000 people in 1 week to watch my film. Well, how much time, money, and energy would that take me to do that in this other route? What game am I playing? Am I playing the game of film director, modern day popular culture, meditations, what I saw cinema as? Or do I want to play the game of injecting ideas into the mainstream, of offering new perspectives to the mainstream? And if that's the game I want to play, don't play it in theaters, play in the digital platforms because it spreads this much faster. It was 2011. Well, if I'm going to move to the digital field, what's worthwhile talking about? What's personal to me? And at that time, I was living in Brooklyn, New York, and I have a brother who's 16 years younger than I, and we were both single. And I saw how we were both dating completely differently because of our relationships to technology. I remember one time I was writing a script and I was in Sun Valley, Idaho. And I had been dating a woman in New York and I sent her a text saying, hey, thank you, love, or something. And she goes, Topaz, when you write love in your text message, do you mean that like an English person just saying love is some kind of passing vernacular? Or do you really mean love? And I said, wait. I got to call this person. So I called her up and we have a 45-minute talk. And at the end of the talk, she said, you know what? Thank you so much for calling me because in all the past relationships I've been having the last few years, every time we talk about something intimate, it's over text. And I really appreciate you calling me. And I remember thinking, that's not what shocked me. What shocked me was that she was only 5 years younger than I. And yet the generational gap was, of course, I'm going to call you when I have a conversation. And yet in the people she was dating 5 years younger, it was actually more normal to text. And what I realized is, and that along with my brother and how he was dating differently than I was that how is the emotional experience of being human, how we relate to each other, how do we articulate our emotions, how do we feel our emotions, changing in lieu of all this technology that's coming into our lives. And that set me off on the journey of like, okay, I want to explore that theme because that's incredible. And I'm going to do it on the digital platforms. I'm going to inject ideas in the mainstream, inject questions in the mainstream via digital platforms because that's the quickest way, most engaging way to do it. But the subject I want to explore is the emotional experience of being human. How is that shifting in the landscape of all this technology that's coming up? And thus launched the Skin Deep, which is an experience design studio. And then under that, we have a bunch of different experiences and products of which the and is the most famous. We have questions and card games and videos, and that's where we're at today.
So one of the things we hear a lot about is because of the age of technology that we're in, we're more connected than we've ever been, and yet we're less connected than we've ever been. So I could see two schools of thought on this book, 12 Questions for Love, A Guide to Intimate Conversations and Deeper Relationships. I can see some folks going, oh my God, I don't need to be told I'm a terrible partner and I'm terrible at all these things. No, thank you. And then, of course, I see a natural audience that go, oh my gosh, I've been seeking these things. Show me and tell me how to do this. For the naysayers, why is this worth their time?
Totally. Great question. Who do you know has sat through and watched over 1,200 pairs of people in intimate, real, courageous conversations? Maybe a therapist, but then who's asking the questions when you go to couples therapy? The therapist is. Who are the couples looking at when they're talking about the answers? They're looking at the therapist. They're not looking at each other. What we've done and what my team and I have had the privilege and honor is for the last 11 years in 10 countries, over 1,200 pairs to bring them into a room. And I'm not just talking about partners who are married or dating. I'm talking about grandparents with their children, best friends, siblings. Bring them, they sit down, and for an hour and 20 minutes, they're facing each other and the space is theirs. We've laid down questions for them to ask each other and they go off and literally we're just sitting there watching them. I've been doing that for the last 11 years. That data set is gigantic. So that to me has been a privilege because I've been able to witness how do you create the space to have these cathartic conversations? And that's something that we don't get taught. We taught that by modeling our family or maybe our friends group. And in the case of work, the companies you work at, you model it, but you're not necessarily taught it because no one's tested it out over time so many times. And so that's what's worthwhile in the book is that, look, here are 12 questions to have a cathartic conversation. But what's most important is teaching you how is you need to create the space and two, how to construct great questions. These are tools that you can bring into your toolkit that you can apply to your relationship with your friends, family, and coworkers, anyone in your life.
So what I'm hearing you say, because I want to be really intentional about this message getting out. This isn't about, hey, how to be a better boyfriend or be a better husband or spouse or whatever. This is about how to connect at what I'd call a real level with another human in a way that if I'm hearing you right, both parties walk away saying that was a good use of my time and with the hope of a deeper, more meaningful connection to another human.
100%. Absolutely. Part of creating the space is that you need to come at it without an agenda. And what I mean by agenda is not bullet points of what we're talking about. I'm talking about agenda of where we're going to end up. You have to come with an intention. But the point is, the bottom line is, how do we create the space with well-constructed questions? What's the result? Is I want to have a conversation. We're going to have a conversation where we're exploring our relationship. Here's the formula. Esther Perel, the famous author and therapist in that field, she says, look, the quality of your life is commensurate to the quality of your relationships. All right, if I buy that, great. Well, then how do I have quality relationships? One way to do it is have quality conversations. We're blessed with the ability to communicate our ideas and stories. It's what makes us so successful as humans. We can communicate ideas and emotions and stories and beliefs and have conversations, right? Okay, how do we have good conversations? That's where I come in. So if you create the space and you ask well-constructed questions, you can have incredible conversations. Guess what? If you have incredible conversations, you have incredible relationships. If you have incredible relationships, you'd have incredible life. Why? Because your relationships reflect your experience of what it means to be human and to be alive. That's the formula.
Okay. Even at the end of the day, if you ultimately don't share someone's opinion, you disagree with them, you part ways and decide, hey, I don't want to be in a relationship, whether it's work or whatever the case may be. I think so much is doing it in a healthy way that even if something ends, both people go, hey, that was still worth my time. That was still meaningful. So with that, talk to me about what are the things people do wrong when they are attempting to create space and what are some things to keep in mind?
What things to keep in mind what people do wrong? You don't sleep in the kitchen and you don't cook in the bedroom. You do certain things in certain spaces. So are we articulating the rooms we're in the house of our relationship? We're talking about work, right? What kind of meeting are we having right now? Do we tell the people to do that? Do we tell people what kind of meeting we're having? We're doing a brainstorming meeting, team. The reason you tell them about the space you're in is so that you're articulating what is permissible, what's acceptable, what we were suggesting. This is the behavior that we want. This is the game we're playing. In the kitchen, you're cooking. You're not going to sleep in the kitchen. And in the bedroom, you're sleeping. You're not cooking in there. So the expectations, the permissions are clear. In our relationships, are we doing the same? So the work world is like, okay, if we call a meeting, what kind of meeting is this? What's the phase we're in now? Are we brainstorming? Because how many times are you in a brainstorming meeting where everyone's brainstorming, at the end, there's no decisions made? People are upset. Wait, hold on. This was a brainstorming meeting. So don't expect us to end up with a decision. Or vice versa. It is a decision-making meeting. You're not interested in new ideas. We need to decide who's doing what by when and how. People are like, wait, they're never asking for ideas. And I know we got to be clear about what kind of meeting this is. And that's part of the space. So that's one thing. Two, let's not confuse comfort and safety. Or let's not confuse discomfort with being unsafe. Let's not confound them. Safety is imperative, but discomfort is great. If I'm going to go bungee jumping, in theory, I should be safe because these guys have done it all the time. The rope is tested. I'm like the 5,000 person doing this. And okay, so in theory, I'm safe because they've checked everything. They know the bungee's good. But am I uncomfortable? Absolutely, I'm uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean I'm not safe. Now, in your conversations at work or with relationships, are you safe? How do we create that safety? Well, part of it is articulating, hey, what's the room we're in? What are the rules? What are the boundaries here? What is expected? And then to say, okay, in that space, now we can ask these well-constructed questions that put us in discomfort, and we can actually be uncomfortable because we know we're safe. But just because you're uncomfortable does not mean you're not safe. And vice versa, just because you feel comfortable does not actually mean you're safe. So making that distinction is good and not shying away from discomfort and actually leaning into it, but making sure that the space is created that you feel safe. And then you can ask questions in a way that reinforce that safety or not. There's a lot of power in the questions. And we're always so focused on the answers, and we don't realize how by shaping the question, you are shaping the answer. This is huge. So let me just give a very simple example. It's 7:30, 8 o'clock, and you go to your kids and you say, hey, you want to go to sleep? What do you think the answer is? We all know it's no. You ask the question, do you want to go to sleep? It's like, yes or no. I mean, okay. But if you go and you say, hey, kids, you want to sleep on the couch or in the bed? You've already shaped the answer. The answer is bed or the couch. The question is shape the answer, the options. Oftentimes, we're so good at finding answers, but oftentimes we find the right answers to the wrong questions. Put more emphasis on the questions. Why did this campaign fail? Why did this candidate not work out? What about saying, let me change that question. What can we learn from this campaign that we could take to the next? What was the failure of this candidate that started the company and didn't work out? What can we do to improve to ensure that the next one doesn't have the same failure? So you're asking questions that are giving you answers that are constructive that you can actually have agency from versus saying, why did this campaign not work? Oh, here's 1,000 reasons why not. Shift the question such that the answers you get are going to be constructive to your life, to your business. Let's just take a very simple question, and because power dynamics are really important in the workplace. And you're trying to create a safe space where you can share your opinion, but you also don't want to get fired or piss off the boss or the politics of the culture. So you're in a meeting, it's a group of you, and whoever's running the meeting with the power dynamics, let's say they are the executive who's running the meeting, has responsibility for some decisions, or the unit leading the team, and they ask a question. First of all, the fact that they're asking a question is already a power play because they get to ask the question and everyone on the team is going, wait, why are they asking that question? But here comes that question. You're in the meeting and the boss goes, Stephanie, why did our marketing campaign fail? Why did the product fail? Or whatever. Why did the product succeed? That question shapes that your answer is going to give an objective truth about reality. It failed because this and this. Now, everyone else in the room is going, that's not why it failed. No, wait, that's not why it failed. And now we have some type of conflict because the question has actually invited you to give an objective truth, which everyone else has different opinions about. If you just add the words, why do you think or why do you feel? You see how that preempts any kind of conflict going forward because this is your subjective opinion. I can't disagree with your subjective opinion. And by asking that, especially in the power dynamic space, it's like inviting you in to give your opinion. And this is inviting you to step in a way that's safe because we can't really argue with your subjective experience. So you could say, from my point of view, ... If the boss says, why did the product fail? Your response can start, just say, from my point of view. But a better question as a leader is to say, why do you think? Why do you feel? That's her experience. That's her POV. Thank you for your POV. What's your POV, Jimmy? And from that, we're inviting different POVs to illuminate all the opportunities for challenge. And then we could discuss from that, what do we think is objectively true or not? But just by adding, why do you think? Why do you feel? Is already shaping an answer that's less confrontational, less conflict. And there's a lot of little semantic tools we can use in constructing questions to invite sharing while still keeping it safe, albeit uncomfortable.
These are things that are not often talked about on leadership as it should be. I do think leadership is a privilege. And a lot of what we've talked about through this podcast is stepping into leadership is not what it was back probably when our parents were in business. It was management. We're not doing that anymore.
Which I think is really important for a leader. When you talk about leader, I love the fact you said it's a privilege. I think these days, if you see leadership as a privilege and a responsibility, I think that's a wonderful way to see that, because you do have the power dynamic. So how are you utilizing that to make a more coherent team? Why? So that we could be more successful together. Why? So that we can earn the financial income and resources by providing value to our clients or whoever it is, to our market, such that we can support the passions of ourselves and the well-being of our family and the loved ones and our community. You could cut off a friend if you disagree. You could do that. Family members, much more difficult. But coworkers, the only way to cut someone off is one of you has to get fired. One of you has to quit. And so sometimes you really have to face conflict with the people you work with, because otherwise your livelihood's at stake. So the stakes of being able to work coherently together are even more important. And so the leadership, when you say privilege, I think that's a great way. And part of that is how to create the space and acknowledge the power dynamic in the room. We often don't do it. But by doing it, it's actually calling the elephant in the room by articulating your intention, not your agenda. And the intention can be, what I mean by that is not the bullet points agenda. I'm talking about agenda is where we end up. Oftentimes you go to your team and you're like, you've already made a decision. You just want to convince everyone on your point of view. And everyone knows it. And there's a power dynamic. So they don't really want to push back. So we're just playing politics here. But instead, as a leader, if you really want to get their feedback, because they can see things that you can't, maybe they can see the potential weaknesses or the benefits that you don't, or they can reinforce how good the idea is or not. How do you invite that? Is by stating your intention, which is like, hey, my intention in the meeting is like, I have an idea. Yes, I do. And yeah, I'd like to get there, but I know that I might be wrong. And I want to have a meeting now to explore it. So you're not saying, I want to get here and I have to convince you. You're saying, that's my intention, is to get there. But I know I'm right. So my actual intention is to explore that possible answer and see if there's a better one. You see how that's much more inviting? Because often we don't do that. We say the agenda is we're going to talk about this, and get to here. Mm-hmm. And in the back of your mind, what I really mean intention is we know where we're ending up. And the whole team knows that's where you're ending up. And maybe they don't want to end up there, but they're not really going to push back. But if you suggest an intention and it get the space open, then you can get more from your team, get more opinions. And then ultimately you'll make the decision if you're the leader, right? But you'll do it with much clearer viewpoint of where everyone's at with more information.
Let me segue and draw into your experience over the last 11 years. So I would imagine there are some folks that sat down and just couldn't wait to engage. And they were just game players from the get-go. Those are the easy folks and fun folks to work with because they're easy and fun. What are just a couple of things? How do you get, when you're fighting that resistance, as a leader, you're saying things, you're being thoughtful, but human nature is there are the skeptics, there are the negative Nancys, there are the, I know what they're doing here. I'm not going to let them manipulate me, and I'm going to stay shut down and guarded. Anything that you can shed some light on those to get through to those folks?
Okay, wow, this is a big one. So usually there's one person who's amped and usually one that's reticent. Usually it's one person who's dragged the other person over. And then there's an interesting dynamic that happens and shifts. If you want to have this conversation with someone in your life, you have to offer it as a gift, as an offering. It's like you don't want to have an agenda that they're going to open up and cry and tell you they love you. But you have an intention of exploring it, and you have to be open to seeing where it goes. If your partner comes to you and asks you a complicated question out of the blue, you're not wondering about the answer. You're wondering, where is this coming from? And so you're not engaging with the heart, if you will. You're engaging with your mind to protect you, right? Because the mind is built to protect you while the heart's built to connect you. So how do you connect to the heart? That's the question. So in the workplace, it's a little more challenging, right? Because we want you to tell your opinions, but we're also protecting ourselves because our livelihoods and the power dynamics. So as a leader, how do you create the space that invites conflict, discomfort, so that you can harness that conflict to make better decisions, find opportunities, but do it in a way that's constructive? It's all about creating the space and asking well-constructed questions that reinforce that space, right? Of safety, albeit discomfort. So look, in a relationship, you ask a question. If your partner doesn't want to answer it, they don't have to answer it, nor should they. But you do have to ask every question, and you don't have to answer it. Maybe you don't want to answer it now. That's totally fine. You should, you should allow your partner to be who they are If they don't want to answer it now, that's fine. And if they don't emotionally articulate their emotions in the same way, I call it emotional articulation, in the same way that you do, you have to accept them for who they are and where they're at. In the workplace, you bring an idea to the table, you do want people's input, right? You want everyone to participate so you get that information in a time efficient manner. And you have to create a space where you're inviting maybe the introverts out or the ones who, need the memo before so they can give time to understanding. So understanding who's in the room and how maybe some of them don't want to prep because that's not their best off the cuff. And other people, they need the memo before to read, think about it over the weekend. And then when they come in, they have thoughts. We process, think differently, which is an advantage, by the way, but it makes differences, which makes leadership more difficult. How do you create the space which you're facilitating everyone to perform in the best way they can and the coherence of the team to do it in a way that's integrated so that we can find the magic between us. We can find the magic in the spaces between of the different points of view that we have. And so that has to do again with the space and in creating a vibe where you don't have to perform a certain way, but I do want you to perform in your best way. That's huge, right? It's not like we don't want everyone being effusive and talking. No. But I want you to fully show up as you, and I want them to fully show up as them, and we accept it. And we trust that we're all going to the same spot, the same goal, and we respect that we all have different points of views and ways of taking information in and sharing and articulating that information. We create that kind of space, right? And we facilitate that with the constructions that reinforce that and the behavior of how we listen to each other and respond. But as a leader, you got to know, how can I create the space for each of my team members to really show up? I mean, I think if anything I've said here is helpful for people, I think the value offering is, yes, there's a book. And yes, we have 15 editions of card games that you could use with relationship. But the newest one is called Team Building. And we have a team building deck that you can play with. We have that and a co-workers deck. The co-workers is really focused around the organization, what you're doing together. Team building is for any team and how we operate together. They can find it on our store, on Amazon.
This has been huge. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. My pleasure.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And as always, thanks for listening.